And what strikes me as odd is, we've had a London meeting, we've had a Geneva meeting, et cetera, with the Chinese, of course, and, they've talked about a lot of things, right? They haven't really talked about trade, or the imbalance, or, what they have consistently described as untoward behavior in terms of how China deals with its own economy.
And that's because there's a couple of things the United States has yet to do that is going to greatly impact China, and China needs to wait to see what happens. One of those things is, how is the U.S. going to deal with its trading partners when it comes to these Liberation Day tariffs, the 90 deals in 90 days, which of course aren't going to happen by July 9th. Maybe we'll have 10, maybe we'll have fewer, maybe it'll be longer. But one of the things the U.S. is insisting on these deals is that it expects countries like Vietnam to restrict its trade with China, because the United States doesn't want to see Vietnam served as a point where Chinese-related investment, instead of going from China to the U.S., goes from China to the Vietnam to the U.S. That's legal today. Now, transshipments are illegal. You can't just take a package that's made in China, ship it to Vietnam, throw a Made in Vietnam label on it, and send it out. That's not allowed today. But Chinese investment is allowed. If goods come from China and are transformed before they go to the U.S., that is allowed. The U.S. wants to rewrite those rules. And if the U.S. forces Vietnam to change its trading relationship with China, China is not going to be happy, and China the Ministry of Commerce made a statement this weekend to that effect. So we still have to see what the U.S. is going to do with its trading partners, how are they going to impact China, and what's going to happen. And let's just say this is not just a U.S. issue. India is watching this very closely as well.
Yeah, so look, I mean, if you're right, if this is the way that the U.S. is leaning on a lot of Asian countries to stop sort of an end run, how are they likely to react, given the fact that if you take, let's say, Southeast Asia, for example, 10 countries, for every single one of them, their biggest #1 trading partner is China right now. I mean, their interests involved.
And so much investment has come from China into Southeast Asia. We always talk about China plus one, and people think, well, it's the U.S. or the EU or Japan who are diversifying out of China. It's the Chinese who are diversifying out of China. And that is what is causing such tensions with the United States and with India. India said it won't do a deal with China, with ASEAN, because it would be silly. And why would it be silly? Because, as the minister from India said, ASEAN is China's B team when it comes to these goods. And so that's what the U.S. is trying to negotiate right now with these countries. Now, countries like Vietnam and Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, they say to the United States, don't make us choose. We want to be able to do trade with U.S. We want to be able to do trade with China. Yeah. The U.S. is making some choices that are going to be required. And what is China going to react to that? That's why this July 9, these negotiations are so important, not just to Southeast Asia, but to China. And is China going to retaliate against these countries? Is it going to retaliate against the U.S.?
Indeed, yeah. Listen, Steve, we were talking offline a couple of seconds ago before we started live, and you're telling me that you've been making the rounds, and you're a busy guy. You've done a lot of these, what do you think, Steve, expert sessions recently, right? What are you telling folks when they ask you about what's going on in the Senate right now with budget reconciliation?
Well, what's really changed is how much the geopolitical risk is impacting geoeconomics now. And from 2024 to 2025, two of the risks that have skyrocketed when it comes to businesses and investors, one is the intensifying trade war between the U.S. and China. Are we going to maintain the status quo of the small yard high fence that gets a little bit bigger? Are we going to de-risk, or are we going to decouple? So you have to watch that. You have to watch the budget bill as well, because the U.S. debt and deficit is going to have massive impacts on the region. And one of the things that the Senate just did in terms of passing the procedural amendments to go forward is to say we are going to eliminate de minimis. So now every shipment from the world that is going to go to the United States, you have to pay customs duties. Right now, other than China and Hong Kong, which the rules just changed, you don't, because when you increase those tariffs into the United States, that the Republicans in the Congress are going to use that to offset the tax cuts. So this is really going to impact trade, especially for SMEs. So you might think that this budget bill isn't going to have an impact on Asia. It's going to have an impact on Asia, both in terms of what it does to the U.S. debt. If it adds $4 trillion over 10 years, what is that going to mean to interest rates? What's that going to mean to the U.S. economy? And what's it going to mean for the types of tariffs that are now being considered for that bill to help pay for those tax cuts? Huge implications that we have to watch in Asia.